where I was being. Okay, well, I'll wait.
All right.
I told her she was going to get my application until they let me in. So then now I'm here. So that's the story.
Good story. All righty. So Dominique, are you available?
One moment, Troy.
All right, because I think Coletta has started the recording.
Okay.
So Dominique, I'll go ahead and start. All right.
That's fine. I didn't have Nikki's bio, so I did not want to introduce her. The only person I had was Dr. Riley's.
Okay, that's all right.
Yes, that's what
So we're what I do throughout the panel, then I get them to introduce themselves and give a little bit of brief history about it. Is that okay?
Sure, that works. I didn't have much. That was the only thing I was going to start with, was just a welcome from the chapter and then reading their bios.
Okay. All right, so I would like to welcome you all to the National Black MBA Association DC chapter. My name is Troy Parker, and I am the VP of membership. So if you're interested in a membership, please reach out to me. That's my little tidbit. All right, so today in celebrations of Women's History Month, this panel is going to be centered around Black women's experience and around education. And as you may not know, that women in higher education face an array of challenges. And so this panel discussion is going to help kind of share their perspectives on navigating the academic terrain as a woman. And these great women will talk about their experiences in the academic field as women of color and how they have overcome challenges throughout their careers. And I am so thrilled and honored to be joined today by two extraordinary leaders and scholars to have a candid conversation about your individual journeys and explore topics about higher education. So if we could go around the room, and if you could tell us your name, your title, the college that you're working at, what your position is, and your education and your hometown. I know that's a lot. And I'll start with you, Dr. Riley.
All right. Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Dr. Jen Riley. I am originally from Atlanta, Georgia. I am a teaching professor of marketing and sales at Kansas State University. I don't remember the rest of what you asked. Was that it?
So how long have you been in education?
Since 2014.
All right, and your hometown?
Atlanta.
All right, and so you, Dr. Ham, if you could give us your name, your title, the college that you work for, years that you've been in your position, and your hometown.
All right. Well, hello. Thank you first for having me. So I'm really excited to be here. I am Nikki Ham. I work at Bowie State University, the oldest HBCU in the state of Maryland. Other places will try and have claim out there. I won't even mention them, but we're old and we look great and doing great things. So I work in the College of Education in the Department of Counseling. And I've been in this position for about 6 years. And I have gone to a number of different schools, but I got my doctorate also at Bowie State University. My current title is Associate Director for Clinical Counseling and Field Experience. It's a long title, but basically I'm clinical faculty that teaches and trains our school counseling students as they get ready to prepare to become school and mental health counseling students. In my hometown, I'm from Philly, very proud Philly person. So.
Oh Lord, it's Philly and Atlanta, right?
Yes.
I'm from North Carolina, so I'm right in between.
Okay.
So we'll turn this question right back around to you, Dr. Ham. So when was your aha moment that led you into higher education?
I actually came to it by surprise. The dean for our college, Dean Jetter, was my professor at George Washington University. And when they were when the College of Education, Bowie State was looking to get accreditation for CACREP, which is this national, very significant accreditation in counseling. They were looking to really find somebody who had counseling experience, who had practitioner experience in counseling and mental health, which I have both. I served as a school counselor for many, many years, as well as a practitioner, mental health practitioner, to help with the clinical program. So she hired me to come and work there. And I was like, oh, I'll do it like 1 or 2 days. And 6 years later, I'm full-time, I'm there, and I'm not going anywhere, and I love it. So it really was a slow, gradual place. I really didn't want to, I like to say, I like to be in the trenches as an educator. I really wanted to be there. And so I was like, who wants the ivory tower? You people write and talk about it. I want to be about it. So I came very reluctantly, but now I love it. I really do love working with students, helping them to find their way and helping them to help really train our next great school counselors, our next great mental health counselors. We need it, so I love it.
Great. And you, Dr. Riley, what was your aha moment that made you say, hey, higher education is going to be my field and my career?
I didn't have an aha moment that happened at one time. I had a very instrumental track coach in high school. And when I was in college at Oglethorpe University for undergrad, I was thinking and trying to figure stuff out. And I was like, oh, it would be really cool to be a person like Coach Reed was for me and, give back and help by educating the next generations and stuff like that. And I was like, I'll do that like as my 5th career or something. I'll retire and teach math like he did or something like that. And I just put it on the shelf and left it there. And I was in my master's program at Georgia State, getting a master's in marketing, one of the first programs of the country that would offer a specialized business master's in one field instead of like an MBA. Because I was like, I really don't want to take finance. Let me get that master's in marketing, 10 marketing related classes. Yep, I'll take that. And I had a professor, Dr. Nita Umashankar, who was a brown woman. And it just shocked me because I was like, she was the only brown woman and one of 2 women that taught us in that whole program. Wow. And I was like, wait a minute, this is a thing? And when I was in undergrad, we didn't have any brown business professors at all. We only had 2 for the entire university. One was in Spanish, and he's a man, and one was in politics, and she's a woman. And those were my examples. That's what I had to in front of my classroom. So when I had her in my master's program, I said, wait a minute. Well, I never thought about that as a career. How do I get that? And I went to her office and talked to her and said, what does it look like? How do you even become a professor? Like, what does that look like on the other side? Like, I know you teach class twice a week, but what else do you do? And she started talking about the journals and all that. I was like, that doesn't sound appealing. She was like, yeah, it's like a 97% rejection rate. You'll write and work on something for like 7 years, and then it might not even get accepted. And I was like, no, thank you. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. So I'm going to go back over to industry and I'll follow back up with this later. So then I put it on the shelf again. And at one point in time, I was like, that was that thing I was considering. And I was like, well, what exactly do I want to get out of it? Why do I want it? And I said, well, I want to consult with people, with companies. I want to write books, and I want to teach in some capacity. And I said, well, can I do that without getting a degree? I don't know. Let's try it. So I went out and I did it. And I was like, okay, cool. I could do it without a degree. And then I was like, wait, what? There's something missing. I still want something. There's something missing. And I remembered I was at a corporate job, and I had told my supervisor, I was like, this doesn't make sense. What we were doing for the client did not make sense. And she told me with a straight face, we pay you to do what we tell you to do. not to think. And I said that day, okay, that's fine. I hear you, but I'm gonna find a job where they'll pay me to think. And that's how I ended up in academia.
You know what? I kind of had like the same experience. I worked in corporate America for the longest. I worked in IT. I was an internal auditor. And then I got laid off and I decided to go back to school. And when I went back to school, I started seeing the impact that I had on the students around me by knowing the program. And so one day I was just walking around on campus and they said, why don't you apply for this job? And so I was still in school, I was a student, and I applied for this job in admissions. And I became like the #1 admission rep because I knew the program, I knew the value of that degree in education. And so I was able to like really teach all the students and people that were trying to get into the program about the program. And so after that, you know, I just kept going. And so like education kind of found me, really. I mean, I just kept going. And so now I'm still in education and I don't see myself leaving out of education. So like I was telling you, you know, I'm working on trying to get my PhD. So that would be the next phase in my career. So with that being said, what are the most things that you're proud of when you think about your work in higher education, Dr. Riley?
I would definitely say the students. In my current position, I have 300 students a year. So that's a lot of influence. My word of the year last year was influence. That was what I focused on. I like to have a word of the year. It kind of centers me and focuses my activity for the year. But it's really just seeing the students never become not your students. Once you have them and once they're students, I actually had a student text me earlier today that I had back in 2014 when I started. We're still connected. We still talk. Just being that beacon of advice and counsel, that person that I feel like, man, this is what I wish I had in undergrad. This is what I needed in my master's program when I was frustrated and buying Nerf guns so I could shoot the Nerf gun at the wall to get my frustration out and to as a thinking mechanism, writing these papers for my master's. Like, this is the guidance that would have been nice back then. And being that person that students feel comfortable enough to come to help them figure out not how to get a good grade out of the class, not how to navigate a hard conversation with their parents or with their other professors, but how to figure out life and how to find their passions. That's what I like. No, you don't have to major in sales. This is a sales class. I'm going to teach you sales techniques, but these are all the ways and all the other areas that you can apply these techniques to. These are transferable skills, and just helping them connect the dots has been so valuable and so rewarding for me. And that's really why I like the teaching aspect of academia.
And that's what we do it for. I mean, definitely not like the huge amount of pay. I mean, it's for, at the end of the day, when you get that email, like two or 3 years later saying, hey, thank you, Mr. Parker, for this. Thank you for that. My career is going great. And so my only thing is, so I teach career development, and my only thing is I wish that I could teach it at an HBCU, because I'm from an HBCU. And I think that they could really, they could really value my services versus, being in a state school. So you, Dr. Ham, what was your most proud moment of when you think about higher education? What's your most proud moment?
I think probably definitely the students comes forth at the forefront. And I think the other piece is the ability to, through my training, to really think about impacting policy. One of the things that, through the time, it is upon me to write and to then think about research and looking at how does this impact our students, whether we're talking about, especially I'm thinking about counseling and mental health. What are the barriers to mental health, access to mental health? And then being able to sit on different committees, because when you're at a university, they want you to sit on different things because they think you have some idea. And I'm like, no, we just are all trying to figure it out. Like, I'm just reading and research. And as I say to people all the time, I just read the things that you don't, it's out there. You just are not reading it. But I just have to read these journals, and I don't have to, but that's part of my job, is to read it and then share the information with you. So to be able to sit at those tables and share information, and especially talk about it, about what it looks like, particularly for our community as a Black community, the ongoing trauma, and, you know, what are some of those barriers to, you know, I'm always thinking about mental health from a mental health perspective and why we don't go those different places. So, you know, I think that one of the things I really am so grateful of is really having those, that's what I think I'm most proud of, is really having that platform and utilizing that to really highlight and amplify what is going on in our community in so many diverse spaces.
So Dr. Riley, we have to kind of be careful because she's a counselor, so she's analyzing us right now. I feel like I'm in the chair for a minute. But I counsel students too. That's why I have my couch here.
Nice.
But Dr. Riley, what is your rock when you need support? And we're not talking about the AKA route. You thought I missed that, didn't you? So Dr. Riley is a member of AKA Sorority Incorporated.
I am.
That's okay. I'm a wonderful member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So it's all right.
Wow. Representation. That's what matters, right? My rock. I have a letter that I wrote myself when I started my PhD program. And I put that letter up in the bathroom so I would look at it every single day and know and remember my why. And whenever I get stressed, whenever I get anxious, I just remember my why. And it's the phrase, and I put it in the dedication for my dissertation: representation matters. If I can let one person every semester, every day, every year better themselves because I'm sharing my experience or my knowledge or my perspective with them, then I did my job. So when you get the rejection letters, when you get put on another committee, when you get asked to do something else that you don't want to do, or you are put in a position where you got to do something that you don't want to do, or you're staying up and your eyes are crossing because you've been writing so long, whatever the case may be, or living 14 miles away from or 14 hours away from home, just remember your why.
So Dr. Ham, what is your, who is your rock when you need support?
I would definitely say my family. I think that, and probably really honestly, I would not have, and I always say this publicly, I would not have my doctorate if it wasn't for my husband. He got his doctorate first, and the day that he defended his dissertation, he turned at me and he said, "You're next." And he was intentional about that. And he was even intentional about don't tell anybody this, he filled out my application. I wrote my essay. He found an essay, he cut and paste, because I was like, I'm not doing this, whatever. And he filled it out. He was just like, you're going to the interview, you're going to the thing, so he literally carried me over the line when there were moments. That's the only thing he filled out. So I want to think about he did any other of my work, but that's the only thing that he completed. But he really did. He is my rock, and was the part of it who said, you can do it. He said, the only reason why I did it first was because I had the platform, and you were the one that said you would take on the kids, but he was like, you really are the person who needs to earn this. So he paved the way, and he was just like, I'm not gonna let you even think about not getting your doctorate. So I definitely would say that he is my rock. Drives me crazy, but he is my rock.
So how are you doing, Doctor? Is it Dr. Joel's Barber? I think you're on mute. You still muted. Yeah, it looked like you still muted. There we go.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. I don't know why I had technical difficulties. I think I really need to get rid of that Mac and go back to a regular PC. Yeah, I think that's the case. It's Jowers Barber.
Jowers, got it.
So I've been listening. I was able to hear these two wonderful sisters and their experiences. And I'll say hello to my soror from Delta Sigma Theta, and hello to my sister, Alpha Kappa Alpha, because there's enough work for all of us to do. Right? we're about the service. And I want to thank Carletta for inviting me to this. It's been a moment since I've had an opportunity to actually talk about why academia for me. I've been on a couple panels this month. I'm a historian by training. So, you know, February and March is really a busy month, and I like that. I got into academia late. I'm a Howard grad, and my master's and PhD are from Howard. I'm a triple bison. My undergrad is from Howard. But there was a gap for me. I didn't go back for my master's until 30 years after getting my undergrad degree. I had gotten married, and a good friend said to me, you need to get your master's and you need to get your PhD. And I said, you know what, Dr. Elizabeth Clark Lewis, good friend. We went to undergrad together. She was the director of the public history program at Howard. And I said, I just got married and I got 5 children along with the wedding, right? And I said, and I'm older. And her response was, good Lord willing, the creek don't rise. You're going to be older still. Why not be older with the MA and the PhD? Come on, let's do this. And I had a public relations firm at the time. And so I was working for ASALH, Association for the Study of African American Life and History, doing PR for them and other groups. So I've been around historical organizations. And I said, okay, I want to do this. Went back and my husband said, look, I got the kids, I got the house, go. Right? So I applied. And on my 51st birthday, I was taking the expository writing exam for Howard. Right? And I'm sitting looking around, and I think myself and another sister were the oldest people in the room. And I was an English major and a journalism minor. And I'm like, okay, I have got to ace this. I cannot mess up on the expository writing exam, right? But everything went well, got the master's. And one of the things about Howard, they're very much encouraging, not perfect, but you know, we love Howard with everything, but they're supportive, right? One of my children is deaf. And at the time had just turned 9. She's now a grown woman, married with 3 hearing kids, wonderful and all of that, went to National Technical Institute for the Deaf. But at the time she was young, and I decided that I wanted to work in the area of disability, African-American deafness, right? Because of her, the first time she and I went out together, she went and got a book, a signing book. We were going to the zoo and she was showing me the animals and she was signing them for me. And I'm thinking, okay, and this is good. And then I was showing her a history book and she said, who's deaf? Who's deaf? And there was no one deaf in there. And she said, well, I'm bored, right? I could show her Black history, African-American history, but I needed to show her deaf history, specifically Black deaf history. And that's when I said, okay, this is my focus. So I'm also a member of the historic Shiloh Baptist Church. We have the oldest silent mission in the country. And some of the members, when they found out I was in Howard, and Ashley, my daughter, they said, you need to work on this case. You need to look at this case, Miller versus DC Board of Education. So that became my focus. This case, very quickly, 1905, a law was enacted in Washington, D.C. that said a Negro mute deaf child resident of the District of Columbia had to leave the city to be educated at a neighboring state. That took place from 1905 to 1952. In 1952, Louise Miller and her husband and 9 other parents filed a suit against the District of Columbia Board of Education, and they won the suit. And the judge based his decision on the Gaines v. Miller case in Missouri, where Mr. Gaines, a Black man, wanted to go to law school. Missouri said, no, we will send you to school in Illinois, but we're not you're not going to our law school. Supreme Court said, you know, separate but equal, Plessy v. Ferguson, you got to give him a law school, either build him a law school, give him a space in the law school, but you have to do for him what you're doing for the white students. It can be separate, but you've got to do it. So the judge in Miller said, you can't send the white deaf kids to the school and send the black deaf kids out of the city. You can't do that. So the black deaf kids, about 16 of them came back, and they were to be educated at Kendall School, but they were segregated. You know, they were in a separate space, but they were back in the city. So this became my focus in my research and what I write about and what I present on. And it has been very enriching to be able also to work with Black deaf scholars and to bring them together with hearing deaf scholars. I mean, hearing scholars of color, because the fabric and the narrative of history has to be more inclusive, in my opinion, right? And I'm not a revisionist historian. I'm an inclusive historian. There have been so many stories that haven't been told. And Du Bois talks about the dualness of being Black and American, but add on to that being deaf Black in America, right? So there's a story that needs to be brought in. And and I'm not saying Black deaf scholars can't tell their own stories. They can and they do. I'm just working in conjunction, because I'm not going in saying, let me tell your story. I'm going in saying, I want to be a part of putting that into the narrative. So I work with the Black Deaf Study Centers, that center that has recently been established at Gallaudet. I'm on the board there. And I work also with a cultural group called VOCA. Michelle Banks started the first Black Deaf theater group in New York, Onyx Theater, and she's a native Washingtonian. So I work in that arena, and I write about that. And it's just been, academia has given me a platform. And of course, as everyone knows, and whether it's right or wrong, when there's a PhD behind your name, okay, you know, you can say one thing on Tuesday and not have it, and on Wednesday, thing, and in the right circles, then you're like, oh, doc, yeah, that's so amazing. So putting all that fluff aside, it provides you a platform, right? And if you have a focus, you have an intention, it allows you to write about it, to present about it, to expose it, to bring things to light. And that's what I like about academia. So, and for me, like I said, I started later. And so I brought a different perspective to it. And it has served me well. I taught and directed the history program at the University of the District of Columbia for 14 years. Then we closed the program. Now I chair the Humanities and Criminology division at our community college. So I have taught on the university side, I've taught at community college, I'm now in the administrative part, and I love the administrative part. I love teaching because, as Dr. Riley said, you impact your students. I love the policy part because I impact more students, right? I'm able to create opportunities in terms of new programs, changing programs, assisting faculty when they say, you know what, this really didn't work this semester. We'd like to do X, Y, and Z. So I've seen both sides, and I love both sides. But for me, the administrative part has been the most impactful and overall in outreach. I think the narrowing down to one thing, I created a public history site tour that each year we go to New York City. We go to the African Burial Ground, or we go to United Nations, we go up to Harlem, and many times students have never been to either of these places. And we've done that for 15 years, including when I started on Van Ness. So that is an ongoing program. We missed 2 years, of course, because of the pandemic. Right before we stopped, we left our offices March 2020. We were supposed to go to New York in April of 2020. You know, wrote all the students, said, of course, we're not going to go. I still have students whose money I'm holding, and we only charged like $5, so it wasn't a lot. But these students still, I'm getting emails, when are we going? When are we going, Dr.
So Dr. Charles, you said something that was really important that we was talking about earlier. And it was you had the opportunity to go to Howard for your undergraduate, your master's, and your PhD. And I think, Dr. Ham, you went to a HBCU for your doctorate.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Riley, you attempted to go to Georgia State, right? And so
I went
what
to
I'm
Georgia
seeing
State
here,
for my master's.
yeah, and so what you said about Howard, you know, that they really care. And I think that's the thing with, you know, with HBCUs, that they do really care. So, you know, I applied for a PhD program with the University of Maryland. I'm thinking, hey, I work there, I should automatically get in. But it was a different story. And so now it look like, you know, I might be going to Morgan State. And I think, you know, it was the same with you, Dr. Riley, if you don't mind me talking about it, where Dr. Riley was getting her undergraduate degree from the University of Georgia. And, you know, you automatically think you get your master's degree there, you can go and get your PhD degree there easily. But then
I didn't go there for undergrad, just my master's. And then I tried to go there for a PhD in a different department. So I was in marketing for my master's, and then I tried to go to the management side for the PhD, and they didn't accept anybody because of how the PhD process works. The people that they were expecting to exit the program didn't exit, so they didn't have spots to refill. Mm-hmm. So just a caveat.
And what's interesting at Howard, when you went for your master's, you were expected to, in history, to get your PhD. All right. So my committee told me very clearly, said this master's paper that you're doing is just going to be the first chapter of your dissertation, right? Because you're not just coming here for a master's. Of course, you're going to do the PhD. And I will say, when we were at conferences and we met our counterparts at other institutions that weren't HBCUs, I mean, I'm not saying everyone had a bad experience, because that's not true, but we met a lot of students who found that when they came with the idea of what they wanted to write about for their dissertation, they were shot down. And for me, the one telling one was the person who wanted to write about Zora Neale Hurston, and her advisor said, who is she? She hasn't done anything, and she's not in the canon. And I'm thinking, okay, you know what? I'm just so done. And so, you know, you go where you want. You know, that's the agency. You should have the ability to go wherever you want, but you need to be really careful about the support you're going to get where you go. And I'm not saying Howard's perfect, but I never had to defend, or in fact, they were like, hey, no one has written about this case. You have got to do this, right? For my language requirement, I went to Gallaudet and took sign language.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's so important for us, you know, in higher education, that to have our voices heard, to be in a place where, you know, that you can stand out without, you know, having to be put in the background. With that being said, you ladies, you know, you've been working really hard. You got your PhDs. Now you're working in higher education. And so that's a lot of responsibility. So how do you, how would you describe how you manage your work-life balance, Dr. Riley?
Work-life balance is one of those things, kind of like a resume. It's never really done. You try stuff, or as Cat Williams say, you try stuff, then you try stuff, then you try stuff, then you try stuff, then you try stuff. The pandemic brought a lot of that home. As we kind of talked about at the beginning, I finished my PhD during the pandemic. My mom actually made me a shirt because she asked me what I wanted. I told her I want a shirt for every day of the week to remind people that I'm a doctor. So she made me a shirt, and it says, even a global pandemic couldn't stop me. Dr. Riley, established in 2021. But it brought some of that home, because it was hard to focus when the world is burning down around you. Literally, I don't know if you guys remember, back in, I think that was 2020, in like a June, the riots, and people had said Wendy's on fire. That was a mile away from my house.
Wow.
It was hard to focus, and my counterparts in academia don't look like us. They don't have the same consideration set. They don't have the same concerns and worries. You know, I was talking to Kansas and I was like, I've never been in Kansas. Like, are there any Black people even out there? Like, what is that going to even be like? They don't think about the same thing as we do. Driving here, in some places, I don't feel comfortable stopping. I'm like, nope, we'll pee in 3 hours. Not doing that. Not stopping here. Get to a place that's canvassed in Trump, right? So it brought it down to me. It brought me into reality to say, like, it was hard sitting at a computer and writing about something when the world is burning down around you. And then having to explain why you can't focus to write, why your productivity is not as it normally is, because people have gotten accustomed to me being a workhorse and me churning stuff out. In that process, I searched for a part of me that I had not been feeding appropriately. What do I like? What do I enjoy that has no financial implications? What do I want to do besides spend time with loved ones? Because that's important. But as an academic, if you're going to stay competitive and you have to follow the opportunity. So between the pandemic and then moving to the middle of nowhere by myself, I had to search for what I enjoy. And you can't count on TV, right? They're not filming for stuff because of the pandemic. So it's not like I can say, oh, well, I like watching TV and movies, because it's not like you can't just count on somebody else and somebody else's art all the time. So I had to find things that I liked, that I wanted to do. Hobbies, remember what that was from when I was younger. And what I ended up on, one, I like to work. And I view my semesters as working retreats, because I split my time between Kansas and Atlanta. So when I'm back in Atlanta, I put it all aside and I'll do stuff that I have to do, but that's the time that I'm spending with family and with friends, letting my nephew beat me up with his dinosaurs, all that good stuff. But when I'm here, I'm working, and I consciously take evenings off, bought home spa stuff so I can, do the whole spa feet thing. And I actually got into adult coloring back in 2017. That was my second book. I published an adult coloring book. Wow. So that I still do that hobby and enjoy that. That's like my art escape. I started doing my photography again. I will sit on the couch after. So I lecture all day on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 a.m. to about 4 o'clock. And I give myself permission to sit on the couch and do absolutely nothing at the end of the day and enjoy the small things like a cherry Coke. So just giving myself that permission. I put it on my calendar. Every day my calendar rings at 7 o'clock and says, what have you done for you lately? It's a self-care check-in on my calendar, because if it's not on my calendar, a lot of times it doesn't happen. And sometimes, like today, I'm going to look when it chimes. I'm on Central Time. And when it chimes at 7 o'clock, it's going to remind me like, hey, have you even eaten today? So just little things like that to make sure that I'm good, because if I'm not good physically or mentally, not only can I not produce my research, but I also I can't service my students. I can't think as quickly. I can't tell them things that can help them. I can't connect the stories that we're talking about in class with corporate America or with what they care about. So just figuring out those little things. And video games is the other thing that I rediscovered during the pandemic. Bought my Nintendo Switch and got all my Mario games like from middle school and elementary school that I really enjoy. Just figuring out what do I like. That doesn't necessarily have to spend money, but what do I naturally enjoy? And so that's how I've approached the work-life balance.
And I think that the pandemic kind of made us really realize, what's really important about life. Because I remember before the pandemic, I was just running. I mean, I was going to this event here, this event there, working, and I never really had a work-life balance. I didn't even know what it really was. and to now. And so, at first I thought it was just a buzzword, but now I realize it's really important, especially for your mental health and for your physical health. So Dr. Ham, what is work-life balance to you?
It is always an ongoing struggle. Probably like Dr. Jowers, Barbara. Did I say that correctly,
Yes.
Sor? Oh, perfect. I earned my doctorate later in life as well. So this was after about 15, 16 years in the profession. And then I got my doctorate and I was a mom with kids. So it was always, I only knew taking my kids to class with me, sitting in the back, giving them some food and just being like, shh, until my husband could come pick them up and everything like that. So they were always a part of my educational journey. But like you said, once the pandemic hit and we all just had to stop for a second, I had to refocus. So really work-life balance for me is learning to say, you know what, turning off on the weekend, turning off my work email. So I turn off the notifications. I don't get work emails coming to my phone on the weekends. That means that if I check, I have to physically log in. So I have to be intentional. So I'm like, okay, that means that I try to have a separation between work and my personal life and my family life. And so it really is for me trying to carve out that time with my family, because I know that for me, that is my everything. So, I mean, I'm doing all of this for them. So I need to give them that attention and give them my 100%. So that's really what it is little things like that. And for me, it's also reading. Once I finished my dissertation, it started reading for fun, like just reading a book that I want to read for fun. About reading. Yeah, because before you were reading a lot, well, at least when I was working, I felt guilty. If I was reading for pleasure, I felt like I really should be reading this article. I really should be reading that. I felt like I was like doing something bad if I was reading a book and it wasn't related to my research. But now I feel like I can breathe for a moment and I can pick up the Cicely Tyson's book and read it and enjoy it without feeling guilty that I'm reading this book, this wonderful book. So that is, to me, it's the little things like that and just finding pleasure and enjoyment in that. Making ice cream. It sounds crazy, but I bought an ice cream maker. I love ice cream. So like making ice cream. So it's really just, going to a webinar on how to make ice cream, homemade ice cream. And so it is finding the joy in those little things, definitely like Dr. Riley said, which is just finding the little things to take care of yourself, even if it's just sitting on the couch. But and here's the key for us, particularly as Black people, as Black women, not feeling guilty about that, just sitting for a second. Because I think sometimes we feel like it's okay to just sit and not feel guilty. So that's it.
I'll give you some snaps on that one.
Yeah.
And Dr. Jao, Barbara, I know you're pretty busy. You have a busy schedule and with family. How do you manage work-life balance?
We had just started talking about self-care right before the pandemic. And the good thing about it at the institution is that it was coming from the top down. It had always been from the bottom up. We just, we say we're going to leave early and you're still there an hour after you said you were going to leave. And the pandemic stopped all that, right? We were working from home and I was working from home and I realized I liked being at home. I had not done on my house. I had not just sat in my house. I cleaned stuff. I threw stuff away. I just organized and I worked, right? And so for me, it became, I don't need to be in that office 5 days a week, right? So I'll have to figure this out when we go back. Fortunately, we're doing 3 in and 2 off. But I am not working the same way. Pre-COVID, I would have come rushing in here 5 minutes before it started because I would have been at the office, right? Mm-hmm. Leave on time. Now, if something needs to be done, I'm not saying I'll leave something in the middle, but now I'm leaving on time. I don't have to be there an hour early than the start time just in case something comes up, right? I stopped the emails coming to my phone during the pandemic. I don't have any office. I used to have my office emails connected to my phone on top of my Gmail. So I would have like 500 emails. No longer do that. And the reading, just like Dr. Ham was saying, I was reading, and my focus is also on Black women. So when I was working on my dissertation, I was reading things that I liked, but reading differently because I was reading to write, I was reading to, annotate, I was reading for citations. Now I reread Audre Lorde's essays, and I just didn't have to write anything. I just, I could just put a bookmark in it. I didn't have to cite and put the page number. So that has changed me completely. I am not the person I was pre-pandemic when it comes to the way I work. Not my passion for what I do. I love what I do. I just have realized I need to do it differently so I can be spiritually, emotionally, psychologically recharged.
And today I was walking in the house, and we're doing 3 days on and 2 days off. And I was thinking, could I really come here 5 days a week? I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it. I think I would really burn out fast. And so on another note, I'm going to switch the question around. This question to go back to you, Dr. Giles Barber. What's the best piece of advice you received professionally and the worst?
The best piece I received, I had a concern about being an older student, right? Wondering if after I finish this PhD, will I be employed? I did not question whether I was smart enough, right? I knew my stuff, but how would I be viewed in the workplace? When I graduated from the program, there were 3 of us that graduated that year, and all 3 of us had tenure track positions. So the advice I got when I said this to my mentor was, that's not your concern. Your concern is making sure you know your stuff. There will be a place for you. And one of the things you do while you are in the academy is you're making your connections. You have to understand that there's a social part of this. It's who you know. And in Washington, D.C., it always helps to make sure that you are presenting yourself in such a way and you're in the right places and all of that. And so the best advice was, don't let that stop you. And I held on to that, and it has worked out well for me. The worst advice, I remember the first year I was being evaluated. And I had my little notebook together. I had all this stuff that I had done because I had been presenting chapters and writing and articles. And one of the people who was reviewing said, that's too much stuff. Don't put all that stuff in there. You Howard people, we ain't looking at all that. And I was taken aback. And when again to my mentor, she said, of course, you're not listening to that, right? You're putting all your stuff in there. If I had listened to this person, I would have been presenting something that wasn't showing the range of what I could do. And so that to me was the worst advice, not to put everything in there. And it was organized. I mean, it wasn't just thrown in there just to be thrown in. It was, things that had been done and were stepstones and building to something. So that was the worst advice. And I'm glad I didn't take it.
And I just wanted to pause right there for a minute. I noticed we just kept going on and talking. I just wanted to see if the audience had any questions. If you do, you can put them into the chat. We got about 5 minutes and we can come back and address that. So you, Dr. Riley, what was the best advice you received professionally and what was the worst advice?
Professionally, I don't know that. I think the lines really blur a lot these days for best advice for professional and for personal. But I say one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten is actually from my father. I was lamenting over something. I am oftentimes struggling with loyalty to companies when we all know that companies won't be loyal to us. And I was struggling with some decision. I don't remember the first time he told me, but he was like, make a decision and make it right. And I kind of laughed. I was like, that doesn't mean anything, Pop. What are you talking about? And he was like, no, hear me out. Like, you make a decision and you make it right. Once you've made your decision, that's it. That's your decision. You make a decision, you make it right. You stick with you, whether it's the right decision or whatever, you stick with that decision and you go for it. You have conviction. You know that that's the decision you made and you have to deal with the consequences. So you commit to that decision once you've made it. And I think that was probably the best advice because it allows me the ability to get out of my own way. Mm. The worst advice, I honestly can't say what the worst advice would be because I probably did not listen to it. So I don't know what it would have even been. I mean, I've been told like, I was told you probably aren't going to be able to get to an R1. You're coming from an R2, you're not going to be able to get to an R1. I was told not to go for things, not to apply for things. I think imposter syndrome is a thing. And just the negative things that have been said and the things that have been, people are notorious for telling me no. And then they have to eat those words when they tell me congratulations that I did whatever it was that they were telling me it was far-fetched and that I could not do. So when it goes to the worst advice, my thoughts on that are you have to take into consideration who is telling you what, take things with a grain of salt, and then most of the time, follow your gut, pray on it. If you feel led to do it. And whoever gave the worst advice will get over it.
Great.
And probably don't go back to them either.
And what about you, Dr. Ham?
I'll keep it brief. Probably the best advice I got was from Dr. Cheryl Holcomb McCoy, who's the Dean of Education at American University. And she spoke to a group of women that I write and meet monthly and publish with. And she just told us to continue to support each other through this process. And don't, just keep doing it. She was like, don't let the no's, you're going to get rejections. She was like, I've gotten rejections, and just really just encouraging us. So that's probably the best advice. Hearing that from somebody who's so well published, who's out there, who's doing phenomenal things, is her support. And probably like Dr. Riley, the worst advice, probably, I would probably say it's probably doing my dissertation right at the time. There was some things that, but you got to eat it if that's what your chair says they want you to do. But it was some things that I didn't really, and I just said, yes. Okay.
All right. So final note, I want you to fill in the blank. Black women in higher education are, on you, Dr. Ham.
Dope.
Dr. Riley.
Unstoppable.
And bring it home, Dr. Jerry Barber.
Resilient.
I did have it wasn't a question, but Mrs. Riley, she did put in the Q&A that she wanted to comment on Dr. Jowers Barber. It's very inspiring, and thank you for hosting this panel. And it is great to see you on this panel of excellence. And so that was her final word. So Thank you for that message. That was very sweet.
Hey, Mom.
Thank you.
So, ladies, I would like to thank you so much for taking your time out of this busy Wednesday to come up here and just give insights about higher education and women in higher education during the celebration of Women's Month. And so I thank you guys so much, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. And it was a pleasure.
Much.
Dr. Ham, Dr. Riley, I wish you all the best. You are amazing.
Hey, could everybody put their LinkedIn URL in the chat so you guys can connect?
Oh, please do.
Yes, absolutely. I can definitely do that. I need to know how to figure out how to do it. That's probably
you know what? I got all of you guys, so I can connect you.
Okay,
that's great.
Perfect. Right. Thank you. And Dr. Riley, before you go, when you said that's so funny about your mom, I'm president of a local school counseling, Maryland School Council Association, and we're doing a gala. And my mom saw the flyer and she said, "Where's your picture?" She was like, So I thought you would appreciate that as a marketing person. I was like, "They're featuring the keynote." She was like, "They need to make sure you're there too." I said, "Leave it to moms for marketing and advertising."
Let her know. Your mama is right. If she said
that's right.
That's what it is.
It's all about your brand.
There too.
There you go.
So I love it. Family support. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all very much. Be well, everyone, and focus on that work-life balance. I like what you're talking about. And you are the generation of scholars. Okay, you guys learn from us. Okay, you don't take on the world, right? Take care, put you first.
Oh, somebody told me something the other day, and they said the research is the only thing that you take with you when you leave an institution.
Right.
I wanted to share that. I was like, fair enough. Yep. It was great to meet you all. Thank you so much.
Great meeting. Thank you.
Right. Well.
Bye. Hey, Dominique, do you have the close button?
No, I don't know if both of these are Carletta.
Let's see. I guess we just end and hopefully.
Yeah, she needs to end.
It's two people in, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's her and Lamar or both or her, but they didn't give co-host permission to stop the recording and end the whole thing. Because once we leave, it's going to still stay on.
Oh, yeah. Yep. All right. Well, have a good night, Dominique. Are you coming tomorrow?
No, I won't be there tomorrow. My hair's all over the place. I have an oral procedure that I had to reschedule for like the third time. So I didn't realize once I rescheduled it that it's the same day as the meeting, but I was looking forward to the meeting though.
Yeah, you got to get that done. I've been trying to get to the dentist for a while now. And the crazy part, I went and tried to get a guy from Howard, and it's hard to get an appointment with him. And I don't know if it's his front desk or what. I just need to talk to him directly because right now he did all my x-rays and everything. So if I go to another dentist, I have to go and do that all over again.
They're going to charge and
Yep. So, this guy got me in a pattern right now and I really want to go to the dentist. Well, good luck tomorrow. I hope everything goes well.
Thank you.
All right. I'll see you later.
All right. See you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.